Dear friends, we're ready to go, and we're sorry for the service running overtime today. If you could get some coffee and something to nibble on and sit down, we'll get started. I want to introduce our two leaders for outreach. Linda Gallo, who's been a member of Christ Church since 2022. She's a lifelong participant in various other churches, as well as in many outreach-related programs, and her spouse is Joseph Gallo. And Dr. Tom Riles has been a member of Christ Church since 1986. He's a retired professor of surgery at New York Langone Medical Hospital in New York, and his spouse is Adriana. Please welcome Linda and Tom as they lead our program today. We're so thrilled to have you with us. We can't thank you enough for your leadership to this vital area of ministry here at Christ Church.
Well, thank you, Merrick, and thank you all for coming. It was a wonderful sermon, and certainly was a way to start this this session. First, I want to thank everyone that has made this day very special. In fact, all of the members of the Outreach Committee are here today, and they have little placards like this wearing around. All of you are members of Outreach Committee. Could you stand up so everybody could see who you are? Yeah. See, it's a whole crowd. Wow, look at that. Hi, there you are. Hi, Jenna. Great. So it's been special. Today, we want to try to cover several things. First of all, we want to share with you all of the wonderful outreach activities that are ongoing at Christ Church and what has happened. In fact, these posters tell a bit of the story. A lot of people know about the Harvest Dinner, or they may know about the Midnight Run, or one of these things, but it's hard to encompass all of the things that are going on related to outreach. I will tell you that at the beginning, though, that there are many other things going on besides what you see behind me. There are ministries that are very special. I see Karen and Christina over there serving us in their way to make this a special place and have food here. I know that Sarah Boyle has been involved with pastoral care. We couldn't cover all of these. In fact, the focus here is not just the ministries that serve our community, the church, but more importantly, the ministries that serve people outside of our church boundaries. So that's what we focused on. But even with that, we didn't begin to scratch the surface, and there's much more going on. What our hope is here today is to try to not only share with you all of these ministries, but also encourage you to join us. And if you're already involved in one, join another activity. As Merrick said in his lovely sermon today, and thank you very much, Merrick, said that this is a goal of the Outreach Committee this coming year, is to really have all of our parishioners involved in some sort of an outreach activity. It's a bold mission, but I think that we will be capable of doing this. Linda's going to talk a little bit later about how the committee is trying to facilitate this to make it easy for parishioners to become involved in ministry that suits their time and their capabilities. I would like to touch on two words that I think are important here. One is about privilege, and the other one is about commitment. I was thinking as I was putting this together about my early years as a doctor, just graduating from medical school and being turned into an intern at the Ben Taub Hospital down in Houston. If you don't know Houston, Ben Taub is like Bellevue. It's a county hospital where all of the people that come that don't have insurance, don't have medical care, but are in desperate need for care. It's a busy place. Every day the emergency room would be packed with elderly coming in that were obviously malnourished or hadn't been diagnosed for a long time. The young people there had trauma. They were getting over altercations or unfortunately even sometimes gunshot wounds and stabbings. It was really a mass of humanity with many, many needs. And sometimes it was just overwhelming to me and to others that were there. And we were so deep in the weeds of taking care of people that sometimes it was hard to really understand what this is all about. But one day, one of our professors came over and was making rounds with the young doctors, and I remember something that he said that really didn't completely resonate with me until some years later. As we were seeing the patients and talking about the medical conditions and so forth, he finally stopped and he looked at all of the young doctors, all of us who were surrounding him, listening to every word, and he paused and he reflected and he said, "You are privileged. You are privileged to be here." And I didn't understand exactly what that meant. I thought it was a lot of work, but he says, "No, this is a privilege." And I didn't really realize till some years later when I was now older and I'm the visiting professor and I'm the one making rounds with the young doctors and seeing what he meant. They were privileged and I was privileged to be in a situation where we could care for those people who needed us most. These weren't the people coming in for the cosmetic surgery or something of this sort. These were people that were desperate and needed our help. And we had the privilege of being able to give them that help. And I think that that is really how I see outreach. We have the privilege of being able to serve people that need us the most. The other word is about commitment. It was about 10 months ago that a good friend of ours actually gave one of these forums. Perhaps you remember her if you were here. It was Lynn Twist. And she had come to talk to us about her book, about the soul of money. But in that discussion, and she had a life of commitment, I will say, to the environment, to women's rights, to poverty, to many different things. But she told a story that I still remember, and I think summarizes commitment. At the time, she was working for World Hunger, and she went to a CEO of a company in Chicago to he had said that he wanted to give a check to World Hunger. And she knew a little bit about this company. They got into some difficulty because of some bad publicity of something that they had done. And she recognized that probably they were trying to get better publicity by donating to World Hunger. So she went in and she talked with the CEO and she gave him her pitch. And after he listened for a little bit politely, he reached into his desk and he pulled out a check that had already been made out from the company for $50,000 and said, "Here." And then she was dismissed and sent away. She felt terrible about this. And sometime later, she sent the check back to the man and said, "Why don't you give this check to someone who is really committed to what they're giving it to?" A bold move to pass up $50,000. But years later, after the man had either been dismissed or retired from his job, he wrote to her, and that was a significant thing. And he said, "You know, I understand now what you mean. I wasn't committed, and now I am committed." And over the next years, she received checks for her various entities that were many, many times more than the $50,000 that she had asked for. But what she wanted was a commitment. We here at Christ Church have a chance to share our commitment, not just our money, but our commitment to helping the needy people in our community. We are already known for having one of the most beautiful churches in the area. We are known for having a wonderful clergy that cannot be surpassed by any. We are known for the thriving parishioners, how it grows by week. We hear so many more. I would like for us to also be known for our commitment to the communities around us. So with that, I would like to start to introduce some people. Maybe you'd like to introduce some of people that have actually been involved in some of these ministries, and let's hear what they have to say.
So good morning to everyone. I am very new to this church, but I feel like I've been here longer than the actual 2022. And so I thank you all for being so welcoming to myself and my husband, Joseph. Our program primarily today is about people who've committed to many of these things you see on this wall and their personal experiences. And so without much further ado, I would like to have Ellen Dealey, who is active in Neighbor to Neighbor, come and tell us about her experiences.
Good morning, everyone. Like I imagine many of you in this room, for many years was overwhelmed by the world's problems, the extent of them, and my inability to do anything too far. Okay, I am not a theater person. I didn't know what my efforts could do to solve the world's problems, so I did nothing. About a year ago, when some of my personal time freed up, I decided to do something. And I got involved with Neighbor to Neighbor, an organization that, having lived in Greenwich and having been a member of Christ Church for almost 30 years, I was aware of, but didn't know a lot about. I now volunteer there one morning a week and have been very impressed by what I've seen. I don't know if all of you are aware of it, but the building from which they do their work, or now I can say we, sits behind the Tomes Higgins house. And I, like many of the volunteers, do shifts, mornings, weekday mornings, and we do the things that I think probably grocery store employees do throughout the country and the world. We open boxes, we put foodstuffs on the shelves, we offer meat, eggs, dairy products, boxed goods, canned goods, and we help the clients or the customers who come and do their shopping there. And key is that they come and do their shopping there. I've been struck by a few things in my experience with Neighbor to Neighbor. One is that it is a grocery store. It's not show up and you're handed a bag of groceries that have been pre-picked for you. The people who shop there have been referred to Neighbor by the Department of Human Services, and they are allotted points with which they can buy up to 3 days worth of food for their families. And the number of points that they're allotted is based on the size of their families. So I guess the other thing that I've been struck by is the amount of food insecurity that there is right in Greenwich and in the surrounding towns. Most of the clients have jobs. They are working hard. They often have two adults in the family working hard. But if any of you have ever fed, teenage boys, I had 3 at one point, you know that what you can buy on limited income is not enough to feed them, and others, of course. The innovative, or I've been told, and it seems to me from what I've heard, one of the innovative aspects of what they do at Neighbor to Neighbor is this shopping and being allowed to choose and to say no to certain items if they don't want them. But it's a very well-run, operationally efficient entity, and they really strive to treat all of the clients and all of the customers with dignity and maintaining their self-respect. So I've begun, I feel, to make a very small, several hours a week difference in this community. And it's also given me insight into the extent of this problem, food insecurity, and I'm beginning to explore other ways and other organizations that are dealing with this issue on a much larger scale. If anyone else here today is interested in knowing more, please come up and talk to me once the program's over. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Our next person who has given much of her time is Melissa Redmond, and she will talk to us about her experiences with Inspirica.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today to hear about outreach. Who here has volunteered at the Inspirica campus serving dinners at the women's shelter? On a consistent basis or once in a while? Once in a while, okay. So is there anybody that would like to, because I could talk about Inspirica and tell you all about it, but I really think it's important for us to talk together and hear what each other has to say about this experience. Is there anybody here who feels comfortable just saying a few things about Inspirica and their experience there before I start? Anybody? No? Okay. Inspirica, for those of you that don't know, is a large organization housed in Stamford. The project that Christ Church, I think it's almost 50 years that we've had this relationship, that we work on is serving meals to the women in the emergency shelter. So these women range from 18 all the way to, they'll take any woman who is in a housing crisis, and then we'll work toward finding them shelter. What we do is, through the Cheryl's Women's Ministry, we have a sign-up where one night a month, we prepare a meal, deliver it to Inspirica, in Stamford, on Woodland Avenue, and we serve the meal. And just recently, they've allowed us to start staying again. So during COVID, unfortunately, we would deliver the meal, but we were not able to stay and talk to the women there. From a personal experience, Inspirica was, I think, one of the first outreach projects that I worked on. It was very new to me. I had done things as a younger person, working community service for school and such. But this was my first venture into the community where there were women my age who didn't have a home, didn't have food, experiencing extreme trauma, right? And I think in what I've read and what I've researched in my own work as a professional, people that find themselves in those situations often feel unseen, unheard, ignored, and forgotten. I'm sure we all can think back to moments where we were hustling in the city, getting to a show or going to do something, and happened to gaze out of the corner of our eye somebody lying in the street, right, asking for food. And in that moment, maybe we keep walking, right? This experience, to be able to serve women in need that maybe feel unseen and unheard 2 miles down the road, is an incredible all-around experience. Not only are we helping people to be seen and heard, but we're giving of ourselves. And one of the most beautiful ways we give is by feeding and caring for others. And in this experience, we're able to do that. So keep an eye out for a sign up. It's done through Sign Up Genius, I believe. I could be wrong, it could be through Realm now, I'm not sure. But there is a sign up, and there's no commitment. So you could sign up for one night, 1 month, and if it's not for you, you don't have to go back. But I encourage everybody to give it a chance. It's really, it's good for everybody. It's good for us. It's definitely good for the people we're serving. And it's a really simple thing to do to have a great impact.
Thank you, Melissa.
So now I'd like to introduce Tom Riles, and he is going to talk to us about Pacific House.
Thanks, Linda. Briefly, I was told to move this over to be out of the range of the camera. Did I do it right? Okay, great, okay. I'm going to speak very briefly about Pacific House. It's a shelter in Stamford for men that obviously homeless, but it's more than that. They have it set up with all sorts of medical services, social services, and they have a series of 5 transition homes where people can, after they get through the initial phase of getting out of the street, they can get to a place where they can continue to get services and hopefully find a job and start to rebuild their lives. So it's a wonderful place. In fact, I think it's remarkable. If you go around our town and certainly Stamford and whatnot, you don't see homeless as you see it in other cities. And it's because of these services, they're doing their job, and I think it's something we should be proud of. Specifically, Christ Church gives a donation to support meals there. We used to serve the meals. COVID, that kind of got sidetracked. But we do provide a meal for them once a month. More recently, however, we got involved. In fact, Andre, who's over here, one of our newest members, went over with me last week, take pizzas for the football game, and had a chance to sit with the men there while they were watching the football game. We'll do it again today, and maybe Merrick, said you might go with us, and Ron said might go as well too. So it's a nice thing, and a chance for us to interact with others. Thank you.
Our next speaker is one of our wonderful young people. And I am inviting Annie to come up and talk to us about her experiences in the Midnight Run.
Hello, I'm Annie Murphy. I'm a senior at Greenwich High School, and I'm a member of the choir here and the youth group. And so I've been doing Midnight Run for a couple years now. And so basically it's a program that we do mostly with youth, but also other volunteers from the church, where we'll pack meals for the homeless here at the church. And then we'll go into the city at night or in the morning and deliver it to people. And in the morning, we'll make eggs or breakfast sandwiches, and we'll serve them at a table in a corner just somewhere in the city. And people will come up to us, and we'll give them coats and warm clothing that have been donated by people at the church. And for the Midnight Run, there'll be stops that we go along to, and we deliver right to people who are told to be at these spots and waiting for us. And it's just one way that you can really connect with people that you wouldn't connect with any other way. Especially in Greenwich, where it's just like a very different place, but when you're in the city, you're really connected to people like in the margins that, really have no one else to go to. And we get to bring them food and clothing, we get to talk to them, and they tell us their stories, and we learn a lot about people that are different from us, but at the same time go through a lot of the same things that we do. And it's just, I think it's like a really important thing for people to do at some point, because it's really big for like empathy and just understanding people who you wouldn't really consider any like previously, or you wouldn't really talk to on a day-to-day basis. And yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And I want to thank Hillary Hoffmeister back here, who's really led the Midnight Run for years and years and done a wonderful job. Thanks, Hillary. Linda Gallo is going to talk about liberation.
Okay, a little bit about Liberations. It was founded in 1971 really to address all the rampant drug use, and it has morphed into a bigger mission. They now work to provide prevention, treatment, and recovery services to individuals from adolescents, single people, married people, as well as families who are impacted by this. They have 2 inpatient treatment programs, as well as 1 outpatient treatment and 1 inpatient intensive outpatient services. So where does this church fit in? Well, I discovered that you all have been active in some way or another with Liberations. I know for a fact that during COVID, there were several families who participated in arts and crafts via Zoom. We hope that people will actually go now that those restrictions have lifted. The 2 big things that you have all done is their coat drive. When I and my husband Joe first came here in October of 2022, Cheryl and Lucy said, hey, you guys are really involved in outreach, which is one of the reasons why we had come to this church. And she said, no worries, we'd like you to organize this for us. And so how do you not say to Cheryl and Lucy, no, I don't think so, I'm too new. They said, oh, you can do it. So we became involved in that in 2022. at that point, they felt I did such a marvelous job, they said, so now you own it. So, so now I own it, and I am very proud to own Liberations. This past autumn, collectively, many of you had generosity. You looked in your closets, you saw coats you might not wear, hats and gloves and scarves and boots, and that all came to us. And I am so happy to tell you that collectively, there were over 700 items that we were able to give to Liberations. Needless to say, in my discussions with them, they were quite overwhelmed, they were quite grateful, and they told me some stories of people who come to them sometimes right off the street without a coat, without boots, hats, gloves, kids, adults. And so they were able to make sure that all of their current clients had these things, but they also had leftovers, if you will, which they still continue to distribute as people come to them. So why did I do this? The strong appeal of this church is not just that you practice your faith, you actually do it. You walk the talk. And so, as a Christian, for me, it is imperative that I walk the talk. I cannot, in good conscience, be in this world without heeding the teachings of Jesus to be, as Merrick said this morning, his hands and his feet. That is my responsibility. Sorry. I have come to know that there are many opportunities that Liberations provides for us. And I encourage you to either speak with me, and I will put you in touch with who you need to, but to give a little bit of your time. This may not be something you have to do every day, every week, every month. But there are plenty of things. There are organizations that package food. There are organizations that work with their families and their children. At the end of the day, what they want from all of us is to have that wonderful human interaction of another person to a person, regardless of our financial standing. And so I encourage you to think about this as one of your missions. I know I'm selling it, sorry. But thank you for giving me your time in listening to me today. And so now I would like to introduce Ron Romaniello, who is going to speak to us about a relatively new ministry called Pivot Ministry.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good.
Is it the right angle, Tom?
You got it.
All right. I hope everyone had a joyous Christmas, and I know it's 25 days
Very fine.
more past. Aside from having my grandchildren with me during the holidays, mine was enhanced due to the following experience.
Hold it a little bit closer.
Closer.
Yeah.
That I experienced right before Christmas. The men's ministry was presented with a wonderful opportunity to brighten a few lives at Christmas. Pivot Ministries of Bridgeport reached out to Tom with the hope that Christ Church would provide gifts specific to children of men in their program. The men have battled addiction and are in a 9-month faith-based program for rehab and assimilation back to their families and back into the working world. We were provided with a list of names, ages, gender, wants of 21 children of men in the program. The ages ranged from 1 to 18. The gifts would be presented to the children on behalf of their fathers or not, and this program allowed to be with their parents with their children until they graduate from this program. There was no shortfall of Christmas spirit from Christ Church. The men and women of Christ Church stepped up, and there was a varied list of gifts that, Tom and I were aghast at some of them. I said, I can't make purchases for an 18-year-old girl. I wouldn't know what the hell to do. There was no shortfall, as I said, of spirit at Christ Church for Christmas. Not only did The efforts of the men and women of Christ Church brighten the Christmases of these men, but also their children. When Josh and I delivered the gifts, we met with staff members of Pivot and a few of the men in their program. Some of the men shared their journey that led them to Pivot Ministries. Their stories were uplifting. The joy it provided me is inspiring and humbling in the same breath. How fortunate we are to give back. I personally have much to look forward to now as an outreach member, where the seemingly simple actions like this can bring joy to many.
Thank you very much, Ron. Thank you.
And now I would like to introduce someone I'm sure you all know, and that is Anjanette Meany, and she's going to talk to us about Cuba.
Thank you. Is this good?
Good.
Thank you. Why Cuba? I get asked that a lot. Briefly, back in 2018, the Episcopal Church, the United States Episcopal Church, made the great decision to readmit the Episcopal Church in Cuba as a diocese after more than 50 years of terrible separation and deprivation following the Castro Revolution. And presiding Bishop Curry, and God bless him, I hope he's getting better. He's been through a lot. He sort of put out the call that we needed to build bridges back to our Episcopal brothers and sisters in Cuba. And being Christ Church, we answered the call. Merrick led our first trip in 2019, and that led to the creation of our companion parish relationship with San Marcos in Holguin, which is about 400 miles from Havana. Needless to say, there are a lot of companion relationships, but it's a funny thing, most of them are kind of within easy distance of Havana. However, we took the tough one, and you know, I'm really grateful we did, because we're good at doing tough stuff. So, oh my gosh, what we have done since that time. First of all, we helped them purchase a new worship space, which they were in desperate need of. They were outgrowing where they were. The older lady who owned it was, you know, soon to die. You can't build new churches, so they needed a new space, and we helped them secure that. That was huge. And since then, I think the other big initiative, one of them has been bringing water filtration systems to Cuba. You can't drink the water. I mean, it's 20, 24, 90 miles from our shore, and they can't drink the water. So that was a big initiative of the former Bishop Griselda to have every one of the 54 churches in Cuba have a water filtration system with public access. And by gosh, or by God, we now have 38. So we're doing really great on that. And that's, I just think, an amazing thing. But we've also done other things. We bring critical medical, personal, pharmaceutical supplies. I mean, everything from a printer to a toothbrush to children's vitamins to candles. Thank you over there for helping us, the Holy Rollers. Diddy has helped us a lot with that. And we also have brought money, which now has to be euros because US dollars are no longer allowed in Cuba, and they can't be remitted there, just to make things even harder. Our next trip will be in February. That'll be our 4th trip, and we are especially thrilled that on this trip, including our cadre of people who, I mean, Adriana, James, Mika, they're our hardcore Cuba people. We will be joined by Josh Barton, our Director of Youth Services, or Youth Programs, and Susie McNiff, who's the Director of Family Ministries. And the hope is, to start doing more, to develop youth programs, exchanges, to have a relationship, a real personal relationship with people at San Marcos. To that end also, we're going to try to spend more time with the people, to have, share more meals, share maybe an outing or two, a Bible study, crafts, maybe building some of those planters that could grow food, all these kinds of things that we can do with them and that can be carried on without us there. How has my time in Cuba changed me? Wow. I had never experienced hardship like on a day-to-day, face-to-face level. I mean, I just never had. You know, I'd always done the sort of in-and-out stuff. And these are people who literally struggle for their daily bread against tremendous odds. I mean, they've got an economy in free fall, rampant inflation, blackouts constantly, and the political oppression has increased. I mean, you cannot even demonstrate peacefully in Cuba today. You will be thrown in prison, and there will be no recourse. That's tough, on top of everything else. But the thing I don't know, I always remember, and I know some of you who were there also, we had a community meal during one of our visits, and it was outside. It was pretty big. We provided the food for that, and the lights went out, of course. That was sort of de rigueur. I mean, we were used to that. And a couple of us thought, well, you know, we got to be able to do something. And my Spanish is minimal at best. So we got up to clear the plates. And so we go out to the kitchen, and, you know, I'm looking for where you scrape them off in the garbage. There was no garbage. People were scraping every plate into different piles and repackaging it to take home for their next meal or for a neighbor or for somebody else. That has stayed with me. I've always thought I'm a pretty generous person, but I give out of abundance and at really no particular sacrifice to my own needs. These people every day give out of scarcity at great personal cost, and I'm still really stunned by that. You know, today you've heard about all of these wonderful programs and causes that are trying to address the huge, intractable, unsolvable, seemingly, problems in this world. I mean, we're talking about hunger, inequities, poverty, abuse, addiction, homelessness, and just plain overwhelming despair. And I think the magnitude of those problems, I think as Ellen was saying, they can kind of, you know, paralyze you. You know, what can you do? How can you really make any significant difference against that? Any solution seems like a Band-Aid. But I believe that's exactly what we're called to do. And you know, every Sunday here at Christ Church, think of the words of that closing prayer. We just said them. Father, send me out to do the work that you have given us to do. That's the work. And I also often think about these words. I think it was Edward Hale, who was a 19th century pastor and a writer, historian. I am only one, but I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. And what I can do, I ought to do. And what I ought to do, by the grace of God, I will do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Anjanette. So a few things. So we've told you where we've been, where we are, but where are we going? Well, one of the things, as you well can see here, are opportunities for each and every one of us. It doesn't have to be a commitment of forever. It doesn't have to be every week, every month, every year. But your participation in doing the work that we are commanded to do fulfills what we have been told to do. And the people whose lives you will touch in one way or another, whether it's directly or indirectly, is meaningful and profound. As Merrick had mentioned previously, we are seeking 275 of you, and for those of you listening out there, that means you too. to participate in a volunteer opportunity. So I'm going to direct you, and you have them on the tables, and I was delighted as you were all getting settled that some of you looked at this. This is a trifold of our current programs which we support. There are, as it says, direct opportunities, as well as other volunteer opportunities within community. You will also know that there is a contact person on there. People who are part of this committee have stepped forward through their own volunteer efforts with that particular organization or looking to take on that responsibility. We are your point people. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out and contact any one of us. The other thing is this: when you do volunteer, we are going to ask our programs to let us know who you are and what you've done, because we need to acknowledge you. We are all together in this. And as Merrick had said, take pictures. Take lots of pictures. We'll figure it out. And that wonderful bulletin board, if you haven't seen it, is there. We would like to fill that bulletin board with all that you do. And one last thing is this: if you are so moved by outreach and you would like to get down into the dirt with us, please feel free to speak with myself or Tom and join our committee. There are such wonderful servants of God who come to those meetings, who share of their experiences and their knowledge, so that it makes us all better people so we can serve others. I'd like to ask Merrick now to give us his closing remarks.
Thank you. I can't thank you all enough. You've spoken so articulately and beautifully. And this is just an area that it's vital to what we are as Christians. You know, if we have a class on basic Christianity, or if you pick up a book like that, it tells you all about what we believe. The Trinity, the divinity of Christ, the resurrection, about worship, about the Eucharist, about baptism. What it needs to really talk about is how do we live this out in our daily lives. And we've just heard some great illustrations about that. I want to thank everyone on the committee and Tom and Linda for your magnificent leadership. We want to help everyone in our church just to do something. And as our first speaker, I think Ellen said that, you know, you hear about these mass needs around the world or across our country, and you just can't begin to see where you'd start, so you do nothing. I do nothing. But here we're hearing concrete examples how we can do just one thing or get involved with one ministry. And if you can connect with one and stay connected with it, you'll build relationships. And Brian Stevens in his book, Just Mercy, said, he calls it proximity. Just when you are proximate to certain people and you start to have conversations. I did that at Inspirica when I first moved here. See Mimi Pivorato down there, and she knew like everyone who was coming to spend the night. Charles and Nikki Rose had their son and daughter there serving meals to homeless women. Charles got in from Wall Street to be there in time for dinner, and it just models for the families. And it puts our life in perspective. So when we think, woe is me, you know, I'm driving a car with 105 miles on it, and my neighbor's got a new this or that, you start to think, not woe is me, but thank God I have an old used Volvo or whatever you drive, and how blessed am I? We need this, perhaps more than the folks on the receiving end, and they will give gifts that will transform our lives, and it just makes, there is enough food to go around this planet. There's enough water. There's enough, you know, in terms of jobs and homes, etc., but only if we all share. And so I can't commend you enough on this work. Our great leadership, they will help you. And we'll close with this prayer right from the Book of Common Prayer, which has so many beautiful prayers that we don't often get to hear. But this is for the poor and the neglected. Let us pray. Almighty and most merciful God, we remember before you all poor and neglected persons whom it would be easy for us to forget. the homeless and the destitute, the old and the sick, and all who have none to care for them. Help us to heal those who are broken in body or spirit, and to turn their sorrow into joy. Grant this, Father, for the love of your Son, who for our sake became poor, Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. Thank you. God bless you. Have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you, Merrick. We've really run a little bit late here, so any questions and so forth, come on up. There are committee members. We'd love to chat with you and answer any questions that you have. Thank you so much.
And please be sure, if you are so moved today, to come put your name on our board. I'm Mary Ann.